Holy shit, guys. Is this one of the worst video games I have ever played? And major shout out to my boy Matt for rising to the call. I knew that this game, which, by the way, Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance, currently available on Xbox Game Pass or for purchase if you're nuts. Uh, I knew this game was bad going into this. As a matter of fact, when I saw this game demoed during the Xbox showcase, I got really, really excited. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm a huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons. This looks like kind of like a Diablo type hybrid game, has a little bit of that Warhammer Vermintide feel to it. I'm in. Let's go. Then the reviews started coming out, and holy smokes, were the reviews bad. And after watching enough gameplay and seeing the Metacritic, which at the time of this recording was about a 60 out of 100, which by the way is really bad, I was like, I don't care. I need to try this. So I went on the Slack server. I requisitioned the DBDGers, that's our crew, and I said, I need a brave champion to join me in this game. And my boy Matt, I got to give him credit. He stepped up. He downloaded it, and we played exactly one game together. What you are seeing here is my entire experience with this game from beginning to end. The only thing you don't see after me Alt F4ing this bitch is uninstalling because it was horrendous. And I thought it'd be funny to do a video on it today, just talking about how bad it is. There are other ones out there, but this is going to be my own. Okay, this is my gift to you, Internet. All right, so what makes this game bad? I mean, on the surface, it's great. You have the Dungeons and Dragons lore, which in of itself really does write the game. That does include all of the back end mechanics in terms of the RPG element, all of those things you would typically see on a character sheet, your strength, your dexterity, your agility, your luck. It has a lot of lore already baked into it because there's been so many tales in this universe to kind of help you frame what you're going to do. And a lot of these games that are borrowing Dungeons and Dragons licensing, or at least utilizing something from that game, really are only just that front end because the back end is done. I think A Pool of Radiance is a perfect example. It's an older game, but it was phenomenal because the GUI didn't matter as much. The graphics didn't matter as much. It was all the behind the scenes mechanics. When you left click, it would automatically calculate what the dice roll would be, what kind of damage you would do. Okay. So I feel like this game already had a huge leg up going into all this because, like I said, it's got that pedigree of Dungeons and Dragons backing it. So that gets me excited already. I'm in. But then we started playing the game, and wow. Where do I start? Well, first and foremost, you feel so disconnected from the universe. And I say that because your character controls almost feel like a suggestion. There are so many issues with latency in this game on a single player game that I hosted on my own. And you've probably already picked up on quite a few of them. First of all, your character doesn't even actually stand on the ground. They hover slightly above it. It's like when they decided where the plane of you interacting with the world was. They didn't actually draw the the level correctly. So you have this imaginary hitbox that you kind of just gloss over on the universe. And you'll see it quite a bit when you're walking on terrain or rocks or hills or anything. You're just kind of above it. It's just a suggestion. You don't really reside in this world. You just kind of visit it. And I guess I could give that a slight pass if there was character customization. If you had the ability to radically change the look, the height, the whatever of your character, I could see them saying, you know what? When we programmed this game, we didn't really anticipate your character would look quite like this, or the armor would look quite like this. So as a result, maybe you don't fully actually connect to the universe. But no, these are 4 predetermined character classes that have pre-recorded lines. pre-recorded looks, pre-recorded names, histories, backstories, whatever. So there's no excuse that the developer could not actually get their own character models to work in their own freaking game. Which, okay, let's overlook that. Maybe I'm being nitpicky. The core of this game is combat. So surely the combat is going to be good, right? You're going to be rolling around. Depending on your character, there's a ranged character, there's melee, there's kind of a hybrid in between. You're going to get the ability to chain combos with weak and heavy attacks. You're going to get a special ability. You could jump, you can roll, you could dodge. Okay, now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this game, right? Well, combat is really, really bad for a lot of reasons. The aforementioned fact that, again, your movements in this game feel largely like a suggestion, I think has quite a bit to do with it. But if you're willing to overlook the fact that there is a significant amount of latency in this game, which I will talk about in a minute, the actual abilities and what you do just isn't all that fun. Primarily because you're hampered by this stamina bar. So for whatever reason, they decided that they wanted to include a stamina bar in what should be a hack and slash game. The problem is the stamina is either feast or famine. Now, for whatever reason, the character I'm playing as, his stamina doesn't really seem to be impacted too bad. Although you could see as I'm swinging on this guy, I have to kind of back off for a second because it starts to get down to like half. The problem is when it decreases faster than some arbitrary number that isn't really defined in the game, your permanent stamina actually decreases. So you can see now going into combat on a kind of a fresh engagement, my stamina bar is already down and it continues to decrease as time goes on, to the point that if I played long enough, I wouldn't have the ability to regenerate stamina at all because I'd be able to do like one swing and I would stop. Now later on you will see actually what happens when I completely run out of stamina, because your character will still be able to freely move, but when you swing your axe, it's so slow. It's almost like you're just open hand slapping them. It does hardly any damage. It's not even really worth clicking. You can regenerate stamina by using these potions that you get. You get 3 of them per kind of, each run. And I'll get to that loot system and how that works a little bit later. But sticking with combat for now, besides the really gimped stamina system, this game has a horrendous lock-on camera. Now, again, going back to the fact that when you're swinging wildly and feeling incredibly disconnected from the universe. When you start swinging, if you're not locked onto an enemy, most likely you're going to swing past them or way in front of them to the point that you're basically wasting your time. It's not going to work out. So you really have to lock onto an enemy. The problem is when you lock on in this game, it zooms the camera into like a field of view of like 20. You are basically taking up a quarter of the screen. And it's supposed to be this one-on-one kind of intimate combat. Now, games like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, this makes perfect sense. They're very limited engagements. You're fighting 1 or 2 enemies at a time, for the most part, where you're really working on blocking and rolling and parrying and trying to, really accentuate that individual piece of combat. The problem here is you're fighting against packs of enemies, 4 or 5 at a time. And when you zoom in this much, you lose all situational awareness. You can't see anything around you. And because this game is so broken, the camera stays locked in on an enemy long after they've died. So you'll be zoomed in like here, looking at the corpse of an enemy as you're trying to frantically retarget and move around to hit another enemy. Your character will remain locked looking at a corpse. And this lasts up to 3 to 5 seconds. This is not an arbitrary amount of time, during which time, by the way, you are getting absolutely wailed on, most likely stun locked nearly to death, because you can't do anything about it to hit any of the other enemies around you. And then after some random arbitrary time, that is when the camera will decide to free up its camera lock and allow you to move on to other people. The obvious solution to this is don't use camera lock, but most likely 9 times out of 10, you're not going to actually connect at all with your target because you're swinging at the wrong thing. It is incredibly mind-boggling that they would design a system like this. And the fact that this actually passed any quality control is baffling to me. I think this may speak to a larger narrative on my thoughts on some of the latest Game Pass entries, but I really want to focus on this specific experience because it is trash. It's really, really bad. So by this point, Matt and I have quickly realized this game is just as we thought. It's really bad. He is spamming attack just as much as I am, trying to kill some of these enemies. You'll see him teleporting and gliding all around the map consistently. That's because this game suffers from some sort of internal processing issue in which your character movements aren't necessarily reflected in the game. There are times I will get hit by a trap. That one I did intentionally. There are times I will get hit by a trap even though I'm outside the visual hitbox. There are times like up here, and you've already seen this quite a few times, when I will do environmental damage to something. I'll swing my axe, and then after about a second delay, the item explodes or the damage is incurred. This will also happen in combat quite a bit when you'll swing at somebody, and then it takes about a second or so for it to actually register that there was damage or that an item was picked up or that an enemy is responding to something you've done. Any input you do in this game is delayed. Hitting M to open up your map, hitting escape to open up the options. It's all about a second or two delay. It's almost like it's in some sort of process or some sort of virtual queue where like your input is not like right. It's not the number one interrupt. It's like, oh, he really wanted to, hit the map. Okay, well, we're in the middle of processing something. Okay, now we can show him the map. It's not snappy. It's not intuitive. It's not responsive. Other problems with this game are the fact that a lot of the inputs in general just aren't correctly mapped. So up here is, I'm going to use the words puzzle incredibly loosely, but you can see there is an item here. And despite me smashing every button and key on it, it takes about 4 seconds for the game to prompt up that something is missing. There's no indication as to what that is. Clearly, we know we're going to go over here and we're going to explore, and we will find the something, which is just this this dwarf rune stone, which is just floating in the air, by the way. Now, when I walk back to this area to insert the key to complete this quote-unquote puzzle, look at how long I stand here before the game's like, oh, he has the item. There is no interact prompt. That would make sense. We don't have that. You just stand in front of the item, and then magically, apparently, I guess, it leaves your inventory, and then the puzzle is correctly solved. It's just baffling that they wouldn't put in any kind of interface or any kind of message or prompt or letting you know that you are on the right path. And as a result of that, it makes a lot of the interactions feel very bad. Not to mention the AI sometimes just stands there and watches you. Speaking of interactions, you're going to see us exploit this here in a minute when I am laughing so hysterically at this point. Other friends are coming online. We're ready to go on and do something, anything else other than play this just total shit trash game. And we just run through the enemies. But you'll see the AI sometimes disconnects entirely. I wonder again if that has something to do with this weird back end where there is some sort of internal queuing going on where like the AI doesn't necessarily process anything and it just stands there and watches you wail on them. Now, if you were at range, it's a field day for you because they will literally just stand there and watch you beat them to death. They will not react. As a matter of fact, they'll continue through their character voice lines as if nothing is going on while their friends are dying. And it's just insanely bad. There is a lot of interface missing in this game. I touched on that briefly, but in order to actually join a friend in this game, it took quite a bit of time. We had to do it from the Xbox game bar back end. So Windows key G for computer users. That's how Matt was able to join my game. There was no invitation for him in the game. As a matter of fact, when he joined the game, it actually kicked me out and re-brought me back in a fresh instance. So there's no way to kind of drop in, drop out multiplayer. You know, you hear that term quite a bit, by the way, drop in, drop out multiplayer. Ubisoft is notorious for saying this. And I don't think these guys got that memo of the fact that, hey, there might be a chance. There's that low stamina swing, by the way. There might be a chance when your character, when you are halfway through a level or a quarter way through a level and your friend comes online. You shouldn't be punished. The game or the simulation should not reset just for another character to play and jump in. But no, this game will absolutely do that. It will kind of force you to reset everything so you can get a fresh instance for you because, it's just so scary hard to process all of this stuff. I didn't talk a little, I guess since it popped up again, I'll talk about the loot rarity. So loot rarity and saving, this was supposed to be some sort of gimmick or some sort of kind of challenge for you. You could either save your progress or you could increase the amount of loot that you find. Now, because there are two of us, and by the way, when I break this thing, look at where I swing my axe and looks where it gets destroyed. Great model there, guys. I feel like some of the transition animations are just entirely missing. How that's supposed to work back to the loot rarity and the saving. What's supposed to happen is you're either going to kind of think of like Hollow Knight if you've played, or I'm sorry, Shovel Knight if you've played that. You could either save your progress and get all of your potions back, which will, allow the next section to be easier, or you can kind of quote unquote roll the die and get better loot by kind of foregoing the save potion, the potions and everything. In my experience, neither of these options, other than I guess getting back stuff, really seemed to make much of a difference. I was just getting very common loot basically throughout the entire experience. So much so I don't even actually go into my inventory screen to change anything because I knew my time was almost done. There you see another missing animation. The item just magically teleports. Your character doesn't grab anything. It just absorbs into your body. Why wouldn't it? The problem with this loot rarity system is if you are playing by yourself, and thankfully Matt is a very competent gamer, you're not going to be able to beat this on your own. And I'll tell you why. It's because enemies respawn almost instantly. We're walking around trying to figure out what area. There's Matt desinking, falling through the pit. There's a lot of areas that we'll go through that we're kind of looking around. Is there like a puzzle, or do we have to stand on plates, or where's the key to get into the next zone, or whatever? And while we're walking and looking around, you'll see enemies just magically reappear. There's a good one there. You'll see enemies magically reappearing out of thin air. Or sometimes they'll have a little animation where they'll crawl out from underneath a rock. But they just phase in. Think of something like World of Warcraft, where the enemies are just phasing in. And you really feel disconnected from the universe. Again, despite the fact that this is supposed to be a potential single-player instance game in which I can play by myself and kind of get into the lore of the world. You don't really feel like any progress is being made on the dungeon. Think of these enemies as just time sinks to get through them. You don't actually feel like you're clearing anything out or kind of pushing your way through the pile or vanquishing evil, going into some deep, dark cave and fighting all of the enemies, working your way up to the big bad. Don't feel that way because that's not how this game is operating. This game is totally designed to just force you to left click and right click and hack and slash and get the loot and get the hell out as fast as you can because the enemies will reappear very, very quickly, which is very baffling. The other thing too, and you saw it there, and this doesn't happen as much as I've seen other reviewers, but I think it's worth mentioning. There are a couple instances, and I just want to kill myself at this point. There are a couple instances in which enemies will get this either protective bubble, or sometimes you'll see a status effect on them. It'll say poisoned or slow or frozen or whatever. From what we can tell, these are totally arbitrary and random enemy kind of types. Additionally, there doesn't seem to be any way for you to capitalize or to move on any of this. In other words, it's totally random. It's just a word that pops up on the screen that doesn't seem to have any real bearing kind of on what you're supposed to do. And it doesn't make it feel like, oh, a fire enemy, if you hit them with ice, they would be weak, or, oh, they're slow. None of that exists. It's just words, which is frustrating, again, going back to my original point regarding just how bad the game is in terms of utilizing that really rich Dungeons and Dragons lore. You just kind of realize that a lot of this game just doesn't seem to utilize that. So why would these guys pay so much for that license if they aren't going to actually use it? That's the part of the game I just don't really understand. Now, by this time, Will has come on. We are ready to move on to anything else at this point. And I say, hey, Matt, do you want to just rush to the end? And that's exactly what we do. These enemies just stand there and watch us walk through and systematically destroy their camp. There's some nice 8 frames per second elevator action there. Oh, Matt just desynced, and he will reappear. There he goes. Okay, he just launched in the air. Apparently, he yeeted about 7,000 feet in the air, dropped down, took a pretty good chunk of fall damage because why not? But the enemies don't even react to you when you're running through the area. They just kind of stand there and supervise you systematically destroying their camp, which is great. Because why not? Now, here is the final area, the final boss. We have to fight 2 separate bosses. We have to fight this guy, who is exactly the exact same character model, by the way, of the other giants that we had, or these ogre things that we had fought a couple minutes ago. And he just kind of stands there and systematically gets annihilated. Now, the second boss, who hasn't appeared quite yet, even though he already lost some health, we don't really know why. He'll appear in a second. There he comes. He likes to kind of run around, as we found. So what the best thing to do, for whatever reason, is we found out that my axe attack kind of launches him back. And to prevent him from walking away like apparently he did before, Matt and I will stand and box him in the corner. And you will see that I don't think the achievement actually pops up here, but I'm going to get an achievement for over 200 consecutive hits because we essentially stun lock him in the corner. He can't even move. He's trying to walk away. He's not even swinging. He's not even attacking. Here you're going to see, I believe, my stamina run out again. You're going to see me limp wrist the axe one more time as we finish this guy off and we beat the demo. I say demo. I mean, I guess this is the full game. I don't know what the hell this is. What a total shit show of a game. It is horrendous. If you want to have a laugh, seriously, and you have Game Pass, do yourself a favor and check this out. Install this game. Look at it, laugh at it, think about it. You're going to laugh with your buddies. You're going to have an absolute blast of a time. Matt and I were laughing hysterically. The reason there is no game audio, though, is I couldn't find a way to filter out our team chat from the game audio, and I didn't want to... We have some colorful jokes, so I didn't want to air that, but I think I covered most of the main points. I think we both completely agreed this is probably one of the worst games we've ever played. Yet I think it will stay around just on rotation for one of those, like, I want to laugh, riff track, drunk gaming nights when we've all had too much bourbon and we want to hang out, but we just don't know what to do. I hope you guys enjoyed my deep dive review of this absolute train wreck shit show of a game. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Get out there and play Dark Alliance, guys. Go Game Pass. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side. Take care.